helping leading us in worship today, especially in those solos. If you brought with you a Bible today, I'd like to ask you if you would to take it and turn with me in your copy of the Scriptures to John chapter 20. John chapter 20. In just a moment, I'll be picking up our reading in verse 27 and continuing to the end of the chapter, just to verse 31. But before I do that, I'd like to set up the events that you'll find there. It is that first Resurrection Sunday morning. And as you look at the various accounts of what happened in the different Gospels, you find that early in the morning, in fact, while it was still dark, some ladies began to come to the tomb to prepare the body. And you may ask, well, why is it already early Sunday morning and they have not prepared the body? If you'll recall, they had to quickly take that lifeless, cold body down off the cross and lay him in that borrowed tomb before the Sabbath came. And his body was laying still in the body, in the tomb, not having completely gone through all the process that would be normal for preparing the body in that day with the spices and the like on the sacred Sabbath, in which they were not to touch or prepare a body in that way. But these ladies came and they noticed initially that the stone had been rolled back, and of course that was a matter of concern to them. In fact, they went back to tell the apostles what had happened, and in John's account that we're going to be looking from today, we're told that the beloved disciple, assumedly the author of this chapter and the entire book, John himself, and Peter entered into a foot race to see who could get to the grave first, and John won that race. He got to the tomb first, but in reverence, he stopped short of actually entering into the tomb. And Peter, just like in so many other things, just darted right on in. We get the account of what was happening even in the heart of John as he writes how he looked inside that empty tomb and how he saw that the grave clothes were neatly laid aside. And there's even a reference there to John's memory of the fact that Jesus had told them that he must die. That's the necessity of the crucifixion. But that he would rise again. That's the victory of the resurrection. And then we read these words that John both saw and he believed. You take note of that word, believe. Because it is central to the entire book of John, and certainly to the 20th chapter. Many of you, when you were just a kid, learned John chapter 3 in verse 16, and it's about belief and how we can have eternal life as a result of Jesus' work on the cross and his raising from the grave. In fact, I have this morning with me an Easter egg. It's from that hunt, and it says on the outside, "For God so loved, he gave his son." There's a cross with a heart around it, and if you pop that Easter egg open, you'll find a little armband there that says John chapter 3, verse 16. I think we should say that together this morning, don't you? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John tells us in chapter 20 that he both saw and that he believed. If you read later in that same chapter, you see how the apostles are inside a locked door for fear of what the Jewish leaders might do to them for having followed Jesus as the promised Messiah of the Old Testament. And how Jesus appears to them, materializes in their very midst, and how he challenges them to believe, and even how he, through a precursor of what would happen on the day of Pentecost, actually breathes upon them so that they might receive the Holy Spirit. But many of you will recall that there's one of the apostles that are not in that upper room at that time. Thomas, one of the 12 called Didymus. In fact, he's earned that nickname, Doubting Thomas. And not being there at the time, when they excitedly tell Thomas how Jesus is not dead anymore, that whether he actually caught it or not, that he had prophesied that after 3 days he would raise from the grave. And in verse 25 of John chapter 20, the last part of that verse, we read read the words of Thomas himself where he says, "Unless I see his hands, the imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." It's a gracious thing of our Savior Christ that he appeared to the apostles again, and this time with Thomas present. In fact, we see a dramatic encounter of our Lord speaking to Thomas in the text I want to read to you today. So if you found your way there to John chapter 20 and verse 27, we pick up the encounter there. "Then he," that is Jesus, "said to Thomas, 'Reach here with your finger and see my hands, and reach here your hand and put it into my side, and do not be unbelieving, but believing.' And Thomas answered and said to him, 'My Lord and my God.' And Jesus said unto him, 'Because you have seen me, have you believed? Blessed are those who did not see and yet believe." Notice verses 30 and 31. They tell us the intention of the entire book of John, and particularly for the resurrection miracle itself. "Therefore many other signs Jesus also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these have been written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, or the Anointed One, the Messiah, the Son of God. And that believing you may have life in his name." So it's very clear that the heart and the purpose of the resurrection miracle is that you and I, far removed, not privy to that kind of encounter that Thomas had, might, having not seen, still to believe. And I would challenge you to take up the call of those early disciples, not only to believe personally, but to share that faith with others as well. In fact, as your pastor, I have spent much time in prayer and strategic planning for the future of First Baptist Church here in Pecos, Texas. Inside of your bulletin, you're going to find an insert that's separate for the insert to the outline of the message. It has colored pictures on both sides, including scriptures and symbols and statements that I have been working on and rewriting for several months. Hopefully, you will take that home with you and study it very closely. I'd encourage you to do so again and again, because at the top it's going to say God's plans for this church. And of course, right there with those words are God's Word themselves. Various scripture passages that form a background for what you find in these pictures and statements included. This document represents only the early stages of dreaming and vision casting in time alone with God. And I'm asking you to join me in prayer, because this document is broad and general. However, I believe that if you will pray along with me and make yourself genuinely available to be used by God, then He's going to bring to your individual hearts and minds the specifics that we all need to have God's plans for this church. And our unique calling right here and right now for this church and this community. Now, some of you are going to remember that all the way back in October and November, I preached a two-part message from Acts chapter 11, in which Peter has that vision and hears the voice of God when a sheep is dropped down from heaven. And I preached a message on that passage, Acts chapter 11, entitled, "What's New on the Horizon?" I make mention of that again today, because in this passage, God repeatedly gives a clear vision and a command to Peter that requires him to do something that we need to do too. Peter had to break outside of his normal thought patterns to adjust his actions to God's greater plan for the advancement of the gospel to new people groups through cross-cultural evangelism. Some of you will remember exactly what happened, that this this sheep came down, that he saw these animals that he had always been told were unclean, and he heard the voice of God, kill and eat. And you know exactly what he said. Absolutely not. And yet God was trying to get his attention, and it wasn't about his diet, but whether it was about breaking down some of the rituals, the traditions, and to do what God was giving him a fresh call to do on that day. That is not to call people who were not Jewish unclean, and make the spiritual application that he was to go out and share the gospel, not just with people like himself. In fact, as we read that passage of Scripture, we watch Peter have to make a decision to step out in faith, in obedience to God, or to stubbornly insist that his old traditions are superior to God's fresh revelations. Fortunately for all of us, here as Gentiles today, Peter finally does God's will. And he stretches far beyond his comfort zone to share the gospel with a Gentile that God has already prepared ahead of time to pray to receive Christ, to give his heart to our Lord, and by faith to be saved. I believe with all my heart, ladies and gentlemen, on this Resurrection Sunday morning, that we are just such a divine appointment and opportunity for hearing God's voice and seeing his hand at work in our lives right here in Pecos, Texas, as we come together to reach beyond the settled traditions of our past and to reach out to every type of worker related to the energy industry, and all of our friends and neighbors in the Hispanic community, for the express purpose of sharing the gospel with all people as we encounter them, as they come into this town, regardless of what their job might be and what their ethnicity might be. Ladies and gentlemen, they all, like us, need salvation and discipleship. And I believe, as your pastor, that together that we can step out in faith and move beyond our own normal ruts and our routines that often limit our influence. I believe that God has called us to be salt and light right here where he's placed us, to be witnesses of the gospel of Jesus Christ to all people in this city, and as we have opportunity to do so, even beyond. Yes, we are his chosen vessels as evangelical Christians, to spread the good news of the gospel with everyone, from new oil and gas-filled workers to the ever-growing Hispanic population that we're blessed to have here in our community. When you look at that insert that I made reference to earlier, the one with the color on it, you're going to find 4 different circles that overlap with one another. That's often referred to as a Venn diagram. It has a cross in the center and a heart around it, just exactly like this Easter egg does that I made reference to earlier. I hope that you'll begin to see each of those 4 overlapping circles as 4 fishing holes. Places where we can put out our bait or our lure, where we can share the gospel in different contexts, and in so doing, believe that God has given us here in Pecos these unique assignments and a distinctive calling to be fishers of men, just like those early apostles, for God's kingdom and for his glory. So if you'll take a look at that insert, you'll find 4 different corners there, and you're going to find a candle up in the top left-hand side, lit in the darkness. Over on the right-hand side, you're going to find a broken chain that indicates Jesus' mission and ours to set people free from so many things that can bind them and make them captives. You'll see an oil rig in Texas that indicates an important dimension of this community. And over on the bottom right-hand side, you're going to see a Bible representing God's eternal word and the principles for evangelism and for discipleship that are found there. On the back, you'll see a couple other pictures. One shows from back in Jesus' day the way they fished, bringing in those fish with nets. And at the bottom, you're going to see signs of wheat and a harvest. But there's going to be a three-pronged statement there in broad and general outline of our unique and distinctive calling for right here and right now. As we seek to be on mission together in this church and throughout this community, and I ask you to see those as opportunities, visual reminders of the importance of fishing for souls and praying to the Lord of the harvest that He will send workers out into His field. Please, I beg you to understand that this is not just some one preacher's opinion or ideas. What this is a clear application of God's holy word to this church and to this community setting. On mission, here and now. What we don't have yet are many of the specific ministries that aren't going to come from me, that are going to come out from the body of Christ herself. As you begin to join with me in prayer, I believe that God Himself will lay on your individual hearts to further help us to penetrate the darkness of sin right here in Pecos. To partner together with community leaders and yes, other churches to form a larger team that produces together, as this statement says, mature and missional disciples that multiply here in Pecos by God's grace and for His glory. But I want to do a little something different this morning before we close out. We're going to actually take a look at two Old Testament characters. And you're going to say it initially, what in the world is he making reference to them for? But if you'll stick with me, I will show you how both of these characters, Abraham and Jonah, have in their stories a unique reference to the resurrection. And how together, both of them give for us a missionary mandate right out of the Old Testament. So if you have your sermon outline inside that bulletin, you're going to see point number 1 relates to Abraham. Point number 2 relates to Jonah. And beside the word Abraham, actually in these initial passages, his name was still Abram. It would change later on to Abraham. I want to talk to you about being a blessing. I believe with all my heart that just as surely as Abram was called out of Ur of the Chaldees to go to a place that he knew not and to follow God, that when God pronounced that he would be a blessing, a lot of times we don't notice this, it says he will be a blessing to many nations. And in fact, when we get to the book of Romans, Paul says that those who are sons of Abraham are not just those who are the Jewish background by nationality, but rather all those who place their faith in Jesus Christ. In fact, the tie-in to the resurrection is this. If you turn to Hebrews chapter 11 and you want to read together what we don't have time to do today, verses 8 all the way through verse 19, right there what is commonly referred to as that hall of faith, Abraham is lifted up as an example who placed his faith in God. By the way, if you want to write down a little definition of faith, you might do that in your outline, just the ABCs of faith. Faith is action that is based on belief and sustained by confidence. I know we talk about believing in our heart. And there are some people who don't trust in Jesus because they just believe with the mind. But as you read the book of Hebrews, and particularly chapter 11, you see people take action. Those are not works in order to get them entrance, to earn them entrance into the kingdom of God, but that's what they do on the outside to prove that real faith is genuinely on the inside. And when you get all the way to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 19, you have this dramatic reference to the resurrection, even in the Old Testament life of Abraham. How so? Well, if you've already been so interested that you made sure you turned there, whether you looked there or not, what you'll find is it says of Abraham, looking back into his experience in the Old Testament, that he believed that God was able to raise Isaac back from the dead if necessary, of which Isaac serves as a type. Now what does that mean? Many individuals in the Old Testament were types of Christ. There was something about them that would point to the Messiah that was yet to come. And Abraham believed, when by faith he lifted that knife to the sky and was about to plunge it into the heart of his own dearly beloved son, the son of promise given to him, Abraham was caught in the thicket, and a voice of an angel was heard saying, "Harm not the boy." And a new name for God is given. Not only Jehovah that he already knew, but Jehovah Jireh, that means God is my provider. And what we find is this, that when we step out on faith and do what God says, that he's going to provide for our needs. I believe that will be true as we step out, as we fear not, as we look up and as we count the stars as well. Because even before that event in Genesis chapter 22, when Abraham acted on his faith and was willing to give his own son, believing that if necessary God would raise him from the grave, God took Abraham out on a walk. And on one occasion he asked him to count the sand on the seashore if he could. But on this occasion he said to count the stars. And if I can kind of encourage you today, I want to do so in the manner in which I was encouraged in a large Baptist meeting not too awfully long ago by a black preacher who preached from this passage. And I want to say some of the same words that he said that day to inspire you. He talked about God taking Abraham out, and he said, you've got to step out. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot just stay where we are and do what we've always done and expect God to do something different. We have to step out. Amen? Not only do we need to step out, we need to fear not. So many times in the Bible, both with Abraham and when Jesus came to shepherds and various people who would see that birth, he would say to them, fear not. And breaking outside of our comfort zones will take not only doing something that is outside of the easy things for us, but it will require our fears to be calmed by the comfort of God. And so I say to you encouragingly, step out, fear not, look up, and count the stars. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's where that message stopped. And it left me just high. But what I know is this, that's dreaming. It's not actually doing. And after the counting of the stars comes the story in Genesis chapter 2, when Abraham had to prove that he had faith in God by being willing to, if necessary, offer his own son up in that mind-boggling manner. And so in addition to stepping out and fear not and looking up and counting the stars, I encourage you as point number 5, or the sub-point number 5 on point number 1, to demonstrate faith. You might even write down the word sacrificial before the word obedience. We demonstrate faith when we're willing to do sacrificial obedience. And I encourage you to not just dream today. I can sit in my office and I can plan and I can believe all I want to. I can even pray, but until I'm willing to go door to door to people into this community, until you join with me, we will not have demonstrated faith through sacrificial obedience to cross those barriers that so often keep us from becoming what God would have us to become. I believe that when we do that, we are to expect a miracle. Where do you get that, preacher? Well, that's exactly what happened in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 19. Abraham, it said, believed that even if necessary, Isaac would be raised from the dead. I believe with all my heart there are miracles to come when we don't just dream, but we start to do. When we demonstrate faith through sacrificial obedience. And I believe that you and your children and their children can leave a legacy that lasts. Not only Abraham, but before we close, we're going to look at Jonah. You say, preacher, I followed you on Abraham. I see how Isaac serves as a type and how that ties into the resurrection. But how in the world are you going to make Jonah have anything to do with the resurrection? You stick with me, I'll guarantee you I will. Right there you have references in the New Testament to Matthew chapter 12 and 16. And in those passages, some of those critics of Jesus came to him and said, give us a sign. Do any of you remember what Jesus said? You wicked and perverse generation, you're always looking for a sign. But the greatest sign that you're going to receive is the sign of the prophet Jonah, who was 3 days in the belly of a great fish. Some of your translations will say a sea monster. I'll let some of you debate whether or not that could have been a whale or not, since that's a mammal and not technically a fish. But that's not what this message is about. I want you to see how this ties into the resurrection. Because Jesus, before dying, said, just as surely as Jonah was 3 days in the belly of a great fish, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days in the heart of the earth before he rises from the grave. There's your reference to the resurrection, not only in Abraham, but also in Jonah. But just like Abraham gives us a visionary message, so does Jonah. Y'all know the little story of Jonah. You learned it as kids. How he ran from his assignment to be a prophet of judgment to come to Nineveh. But how God made sure that even through that swallowing of the great fish that he would finally pronounce judgment. But you know what he wanted? He wanted them to burn for all that had happened. And he certainly hoped that the judgment that he was about to proclaim would happen. But do you even know why Jonah didn't want to go? Get this, Jonah knew the heart of God. And Jonah said, I know my God, he has loving kindness, and they may actually repent. And what would be the worst thing of all is if they would repent, and instead of being burnt like a crisp, they would actually be saved. And so Jonah did a dastardly thing after he pronounced judgment all over the place. He sat down to watch God strike that city. And he did so under the shade of a little plant. There's a message of God's sovereignty in the book of Jonah, because it will say that God sent this great fish. But there's another animal that God sent with a purpose. God sent a worm to nibble on that plant till he had no shade. And do you know this? Jonah was more upset with God for taking away his shade than he was with the prospect that the entire city of Nineveh might be burned up because of their sin. And so here are the little lessons that you need to know that are missionary messages for us in Pecos right here. You take them home with you. Number one, beware. Beware of judging the sins of other groups and ethnicities instead of obeying the specific assignments of God. Ouch! Oh, we do this, don't we? Comments about their time, about what they do, about people who are unlike us and their economic level, not just the color of their skin, but the way they live their lives. And that's exactly what Jonah did. And he ran from his assignment because he didn't think the people he was assigned to go to were worth it. Number two. Not only beware, but be sure. Be sure to listen to God's word for the purpose of doing these things. Developing a heart that is filled with mercy. Did Jonah have that? Not initially, certainly. A mind that is focused on mission. And feet that are willing to move outside of their comfort zones to join God in spreading His message for His glory to every people group, not just a select few. There was the tendency among the Jews in the Old Testament to think they were the chosen and special ones, and that other people did not deserve God's mercy and grace as if somehow they did. And what's worse, they wrote off some people because they had sinned such vile sins that they figured that they shouldn't even hear the message or have a chance to repent. And so that leads us to number three. And it maybe cuts closer to home than anything else. Not only beware of judging instead of doing your assignment, and be sure of listening to God's word, to have this heart filled with mercy and mind focused on missions, and feet willing to move to share the message with everyone, but be alarmed. It's the sub number three under Jonah in your outline. Be alarmed. When you find yourself more concerned about your, here it is, personal luxuries than other people's eternal destinies. That's exactly what happened to Jonah. He felt sorry for himself that he lost his shade when a city was about to be destroyed if they did not repent. We can sit inside our luxuries that may come to us because of the oil boom and the new money it may bring to the city, and not be concerned for the person just on the other side of the door across the street who does not know Jesus Christ. So that leads us to number four. be committed. Not only alarmed when you're focused on luxuries instead of other people's destinies, but be committed to cross-cultural evangelism between the resurrection and the rapture. Jesus appeared to many, and he said to them before he ascended their responsibility from the time of his resurrection till his return to do this cross-cultural evangelism. Now, a lot of you don't know this, but 12 churches were here recently for a one-day conference on breaking down barriers and building bridges to reach the Hispanic community with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I invited Jesse Rincones, the president of the Hispanic Baptist Convention of Texas, and he shared with us not only in that morning message from the book of Acts, a sermon entitled Around the World and Across the Street, implying that sometimes we're willing to give to missions and praying for missions around the world, but not willing to go and share the gospel with somebody just across the street. But that evening, that's when those 12 churches came together. And I have you to thank for that. Some of you, probably Christina in particular, were key in helping different churches from different backgrounds to be here. So whether they were here from Herman or from Monahans or many of the Hispanic churches in our area, 12 different churches assembled together in our fellowship hall for a Mexican-style fiesta buffet and listened to a cross-cultural mission seminar entitled Better Understanding Our Hispanic Friends and Neighbors. Mr. Rincones talked to us about the differences between first, second, and third generation Hispanics. And those 12 churches, they crossed cultural and linguistic and denominational boundaries to unite with us in a prayer-filled desire to work together in whatever way possible to reach this region. And I would implore you to continue to do that today. As that theme for the missions offering for Annie Armstrong in North America says, because folks, we're in North America and we need to be on mission here and now. In fact, as we come to the conclusion of the message today, I want to implore you to see that the Easter symbols are not just a cross and an empty tomb. But join me in believing that they include a fish hook too. At the beginning of Jesus' ministry, in Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 22, we hear Jesus say these words to at least 4 of his apostles that he was calling at that time. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Immediately they left their notes, their nets, their boats, their father, and followed Jesus to fish for human souls. But at the very end of his ministry, and what we refer to as the Great Commission, Jesus spoke to them once again and used these words that will be familiar to most of you. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. We often think of that word nation having to do with a boundary line in geography. But the actual word there might be better translated nationalities or ethnicities. And so whether we're in Pecos or whether around the world, we need to be sharing the gospel and making disciples with everyone. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, then Jesus assures them, and I believe us too, that in that sacred task until the end of the ages that he will be with us. In fact, at the beginning of the book of Acts, Luke describes one of the final conversations that Jesus had with his core group before ascending miraculously into heaven. And in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, he says this, but you will receive power. And after that, the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria, and to the remotest part of the earth. In like manner, I believe with all my heart that we're to start right here in our own Jerusalem, Pecos, Texas, and move on out in concentric circles of concern to every group, in every place, wherever we go, on mission here and now. In fact, I'm thoughtful of a verse of Scripture that says that there was a group of men called the sons of Issachar that knew their times and what to do. Listen to me, folks. I am praying for a group of men who will know their city and their time and their Bible, and they will know what to do. Like Mordecai is famous in Esther chapter 4 and verse 14 for speaking to Esther and saying, For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your family will perish. And who knows, but that you have come to this royal position, this kingdom, for such a time as this. Ladies and gentlemen, if we remain silent, God will definitely raise up someone else. We're not his answer. We only get to be a part of it. And anyone who's willing to share the gospel will bring relief and deliverance through that gospel message to those who are assembled here in Pecos, right here and right now. But ladies and gentlemen, if we say no right here and right now, we have no promise that he will not close the doors and lock them here someday. Instead, the opposite can happen. There can be a turnaround and great growth as we're obedient to the Great Commission, as we reach out and be fishers for men right here and right now, doing cross-cultural ministry and missions, making the oil field and the gas field our mission fields, while simultaneously reaching out in love and with God's Word to the greater Hispanic community. So right now, I'm going to ask two groups, deacons and our youth right here, to help me out. Right here on the front pew, there are some handouts of fishing hooks right on the side of something there, and they're going to start passing them out to you. As they do that, I'm going to tell you that Philippians chapter 1, verses 3 through 6 says, I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always offering prayer with joy in my every prayer for you all, in view of, get this, your participation in the gospel, from the first day until now. For I am confident in this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will complete it or perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. Ladies and gentlemen, please go home knowing this about your pastor. Number one, I am grateful for the strong and rich heritage of this church's past. Number two, I am thankful. I'm thankful for the resources, the leadership, the giving, and the ministries that are here right now, today, in this church's present. But number three, I also have hope, and I believe a biblical confidence that if we will say yes today to be partners in sharing the gospel on mission right here and now, then rather than screaming, there can be something dramatic that happens, and there can be a new fresh wind and fire of God's Spirit, and we can have a glorious and bright future for tomorrow. Yes, the symbols of Easter are not just a cross and an empty tomb, but I believe with all my heart that they include a fishing hook too. And we can be fishers of men for human souls by saying yes today, whether you walk in the aisle or not. You can say yes and say, I'm going to look at that and take seriously, who do I know that needs Jesus? That I can pray with, that I can love on, that when the door is open, I can share the gospel to. For anyone here today who may yourself not know Jesus Christ, you can find some other symbols inside your bulletin, and we close with them. They are a heart. And it's on the back of that insert about Celebrate Recovery. You see a heart in the word, God loves you. You see a cross. You see an X indicating the darkness of our sin. And you see a cross. There's one verse that ties all three of those symbols together. It's Romans 5 and verse 8 that says, God demonstrated his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. You see a check that says to turn from sin and trust in Christ, and you see an H that stands for hope, for heaven, and for the Holy Spirit. If you will today follow what is said in Romans 10, 9, and 10, you can be saved. Are you listening? If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart man believes and is justified, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Stand with me, if you would, for our hymn of invitation. My invitation is this: get saved by Jesus and go fishing. both here and now.